Everybody's on.
All right.
We're good.
Episode 3, baby.
Episode 3 of That Record Got Me High. And this will be after this podcast. We're going to planning to go live. So this is, if you're hearing this, we've been working at this for I don't know what, a month.
I guess a month. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to push them out on SoundCloud and hopefully get some feedback via the comment section on SoundCloud.
And we have an email address now, too.
We do.
trgmh33@gmail.com.
What the 30th was that?
I had to put something else because just trgmh
was
already
enough. Used. Yeah.
You had to be more, and then I said a number, and I said, 33 for a record, 33 and a third, right?
Absolutely.
So send us, and you can send us whatever, obviously ideas for future records.
Yes.
And criticisms are fine because I was thinking no one can criticize us more than our than our friends and family already do,
or ourselves.
Right.
Sitting and listening to them.
So have at it.
Can be an exercise in self-understanding, just like Hunky Dory, which has a lot of that on Hunky Dory.
Yes, definitely.
So that was a cheesy way to get into that.
But let's get into it, man. Hunky Dory. I'm excited, and I know as soon as I mentioned to you that I want to do that, your eyes lit up. You just went, yeah.
Absolutely. I love David Bowie, and this is one of I think his most interesting records because it's stylistically all over the place. Like, after this, it was Ziggy Stardust, and you had a rock and roll star, and you had a rock and roll persona. And in this, he goes from... It's like changes oddly the opening track.
Yes.
Presages what happens after this because every track is totally different musically and sort of stylistically.
Now, did you come to this early, or when did you? Because I came to this record late.
Me too.
I owned. Ziggy Stardust was a big album for me. I love that record. And I played the shit out of that record.
Yeah.
And I had Scary Monsters, and I had Diamond Dogs.
Yep.
So I didn't listen to this until the 80s, like the late 80s.
Yeah. I'd probably heard it. I
heard changes, some songs.
Of course.
Yes, right.
And I started with Heroes, and then Low, and then Lodger, the Eno trilogy.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of the first three I heard.
Wow, that's cool.
I was in, Quincy Public Library. Once again, Quincy, Illinois Public Library. Thank you.
God, man.
Thanks whoever donated those records to them. And
but this record came out in 1971.
Yeah.
That's so we would have been babies.
Yeah, I was in first grade. So.
And he was 20. He was only 24.
Right.
That makes me feel inadequate, wildly inadequate.
Yeah, because there's some lyrical stuff on here that it's extremely mature and extremely thoughtful and clever in a very knowing way.
Yes, and it's ridiculous. But you got to remember, he's not a normal person. He wasn't a normal person.
No,
exceptional person. We can't compare ourselves to David Bowie. No.
Well, you can, but only negatively.
Yes, in a bad way to make us look terribly bad. All right, cool. So so both of us, I guess, came to it later, and I didn't realize, I knew the song Changes, and then wow, this record is so good.
Yeah.
And then in researching it a little, I saw that this was the band that became Ziggy Stardust. These were the Ziggy Stardust players. So you had Mick Ronson.
Yep.
You had the bass player Trevor Bolder. Drummer Mick Woodmansey?
Yeah, you got it. Woodmansey, or probably something like. We'll try the.
And on piano, who do we have?
Who was on piano?
Rick Wakeman.
Oh, right. Rick Wakeman is actually he gets a lot of flack, but he's actually played on some really cool things.
He did. I know. I saw that he did a lot of stuff with Elton John, which is unusual because Elton John's a piano player, obviously. But Rick Wakeman of Yes, which Yes is, I have no problem with Yes.
Nah,
Yes
fine.
Is very very proggy.
They are. But Wakeman has I've got a great story about Rick Wakeman that we'll save for a later episode.
Oh, okay. All right. Nice. You and your stories.
Oh, I collect stories.
That's awesome.
Right, but the Ziggy Stardust, even though it's those players, it's a for the most part, a much more subdued affair than like Man Who Stole the World, which did have the previous record. Man Who Stole the World is before this.
It was the record before this, and it is more rock. Yeah, it has
more rock
heavier rock,
and it's got Ronson on it. But it also had Tony Visconti was the bass player,
right? Exactly.
Who went on to produce
later on. He did, but he didn't produce this one.
No.
But this one sounds great.
It does.
All right, so let's get in. And the first, this definitely is not a heavy guitar record because the first two songs hardly even have any guitar.
Very laid back. Right.
So Changes, let's get it right into it. Opens up with Changes. It's got that cool opening intro with the piano, and this song, I guess when I
it almost starts to rock because he plays sort of a dun 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 dun.
Oh, right,
you think,
yeah.
it's going to be like a rocking thing, and then it just settles right back down.
And then settles right back into it. And the lyrics, I remember back when I first heard it, I thought the lyrics were more about like maybe someone young going through changes and getting older, but now in revisiting it and everything, you feel like it's more like him, like an ode to his own love of reinventing himself.
Certainly the first verse is. And then don't want to be a richer man. Well, that contract he signed with, who was he with? Main Man? That took care of that. He was not going to be a richer man for quite a while. Not yet. But the second verse is gets into a little bit of a metaphysical deal.
And these children that you spit on, that part?
No.
Okay.
Watch the ripples change their size, but never leave the stream of warm impermanence.
Uh-huh.
So he is dipping into, Buddhism, and so the days flow through my eyes. He's an observer of his own life, going past.
Which he does revisit a lot on this record.
Absolutely, he does. That this record is probably the most philosophically dense record that he made. It seems like Nietzsche plays a huge role in this.
Oh yeah, right. He's very. He mentions the Superman, the whole Nietzsche thing, which I'll be totally honest, I don't totally get all that because
it's okay. It's fine. It was it was what he was into, and then also Aleister Crowley or Crowley. I'm not sure. He says Crowley, and
Ozzy Osbourne says Crowley, Mr. Crowley. So
they do,
I'll always go.
But I've been corrected at some point and been told it was Crowley, and he brings up, there's some Crowley references in here as well. So he was into those things, and he actually continued to be into the that stuff for quite a while. It reappears in some later lyrics.
Right.
But
it's funny, and when he talks about children, these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds, it's funny when you think of it. You think like he's talking about these children, but he was like a child. He's only 24 then, so he's kind of talking. It's kind of autobiographical in a way.
Yeah, but he's also putting himself in the place of someone who's wizened. And he started in pop music in 68 or 66. He actually had been around for David Jones and what was his first band? He'd been around.
Oh yeah, right.
The Upper Third or something like that.
The Hype was the Hype. No, the Hype was this actually band before they.
Yeah, right.
From Mars, they called themselves.
Yeah, and he.
But yeah, right. He was in it since. Yeah, he had been in it for a while. He was kind of At 24, obviously, he had already been through a lot and done a lot. And released some great stuff. I mean, Space Oddity was probably like one of the first things I ever heard from him, and that's still amazing. That's
right.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that's 69, so that's 2 years before this.
Right.
So to have made that many records at the age of 24, he is, he does have some experience that to speak from.
Yes. So Changes, a great opener, opening song,
and probably the hit off this record, the one you're most liable to hear on the radio is Changes.
Yes, exactly, and it's been used in a lot of things. I'm sure, like movies and things like that. It's definitely
it has.
It's a great song. It's catchy. It's very catchy.
Oh, You Pretty Things, track 2, and And it starts off, he's in asking someone to help him out, put another log on the fire for me. He's made
right.
He's put made the breakfast and coffee. But then, as was discussed online, a crack in the sky and a hand reaching down to me. That's the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, or the Michelangelo's.
Oh, okay. The hand, right.
Yeah.
The hand of God reaching out to him.
The hand of God reaching out to him. All the nightmares came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. That's not a good way to wake up. He's got coffee and breakfast, and then,
Right.
And
now, did you read that, which I had never known this, that the song was first released by Peter Noone from Herman's Hermits?
I did not listen to that version.
There is a single version of this song with Peter Noone of Herman's Hermits did before that, and Bowie played a piano on it, and it became a number 12 hit in England, and
which is, stuff goes up the charts in England, especially back then. It could be, number 12 for a week, and then next week is just gone.
It's not very good. It's like the song without any teeth. And NME had a great review of it. They called it one of rock and roll's most outstanding. Well, this is obviously after the fact, after Bowie released it. But they said one of rock and roll's most outstanding examples of a singer failing to achieve any degree of empathy whatsoever with the mood and content of the lyric. Yeah,
he was like, here, they handed in the lyrics and were like, here's the song.
He even changed the line. Instead of saying the earth is a bitch, he said the earth is a beast instead of bitch.
So he could go on television and sing it in case it was a hit right top of the pops, and he wouldn't have to change the word from bitch.
This song really has great lyrics, and also I'm sure you've noticed that Pete Shelley of the Buzzcocks lifted superior, the term homo superior, when he did the song Homo sapien. Yeah, like his solo, when he went solo from the Buzzcocks, Homo sapien, and he did use, and he definitely, said, I got that from Bowie.
Of course.
From Bowie. Yeah. That's great,
And he's,
that's just Barry's dog spitting up.
Sorry. There's going to be some interesting 15-year-old dog sounds in the background.
Is he only 15? Because I was going to guess like 20 maybe.
Yeah, Lily's, she's 15, so.
She's a sweetheart.
I think about a world to come where the books were found by the Golden Ones. So, again, that's Crowley, Golden Dawn. You've got the mystical... the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That was
right.
And
so this is like sort of signaling that the old guard is coming down and the youth is
but then he talks about a Nietzsche thing after that immediately. So I might be wrong. He may be talking about something in Nietzsche that I'm not familiar with either. By a puzzled man who questions what we were here for. It could be Crowley, could be Nietzsche, but those two characters figure heavily in Hunky Dory. And I was thinking about the album title. But right before you got here, I thought I hadn't really considered it at all. But Hunky Dory.
Me neither, actually. Yeah. So what did you come up with?
That's the sound of a dog taking its last breath. So
hopefully not his last breath.
Well,
she's okay.
Hunky Dory, and then the album cover. He's got the Garbo face. So the ambiguous gender stuff.
Right.
And that's just and then I noticed in this in the chorus, "Oh, you pretty things," and there's speculation that he may have said something about, but there was the British band, the Pretty Things.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Who may appear on this podcast at some point because they've got a couple of really incredible records that are a little bit under.
With the first episode, Radiohead definitely. We had decided that Radiohead had definitely listened to some
Parachute.
Some Pretty Things.
And in this chorus, it sounds like written. It says, "Don't you know you're driving your mamas and papas insane?" And I think there's another voice that's saying something else.
Oh, okay.
I think there's two different things being said there, and I'm not sure what the other thing is, but we're going to need to consult maybe somebody from the Southern Baptist Convention because it seems like maybe it could be satanic. We have a, you know,
well, maybe the guy find the same guy that told you were pronouncing Alistair Crowley wrong.
Right.
Whoever that guy
and
was.
then there was a commentary that said Mamas and Papas. He thought, don't you drive, you're driving in Mamas and Papas. That he's talking about the band, the Mamas and Papas. I don't know that I buy that.
Who knows, though? You never know. He was very,
by 71, Mamas and Papas are just like old news, right?
I guess. But he was very, you could tell he's very enamored with American music and American things in this record, especially.
And this is a track where you get the full effect of David Bowie doing his own backing vocals.
Right, which is all over this record, and it's great. And that to me is always like can be hit or miss because sometimes it could just sound too samey. But he's so great.
He's the best background vocalist of all time.
He's great because he's all over a Transformer with background vocals, and he's great. So why not do it for his own?
Yeah, records? when you hear them when the there's a episode of one of those how this album was made about Transformer, which Mick Ronson produced, and Bowie sang background vocals on, and they fade out everything except Bowie's background vocals on "Satellite of Love."
Oh, nice, yes.
And it's chilling. It's frighteningly good.
So great.
And you know he's doing it. You know he did it in one take.
Right. In the room, probably sitting at the board, probably didn't even go at the board. Probably
exactly.
sat at the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do the next one, and it's amazing.
It's great.
You gotta make way for the Homo Superior. That is Nietzsche 101.
Right. But with a real snappy tune behind it.
Absolutely.
So awesome.
He's bringing it to a mass audience without them even realizing it. He's exposing people to ideas that they're will percolate in there or not. And you either get, someone who the light goes off or you get, Beavis and Butthead.
Right. Speaking of Beavis and Butthead, we go to 8-line poem,
right?
Which is literally an 8-line poem.
It is.
Put some music, and it's awesome.
It is. And it is...
This is the first song that actually has some guitar in it that you could actually hear the guitar. And Mick Ronson plays some really good, tasty, twangy guitar in it. And
right into the board, too. It's got the sound of a guitar, a Les Paul plugged right into the board.
So good. And it's just a tactful cactus by your window.
Yeah.
Surveys the prairie in your room. It's just like it's a really good poem. I'm not going to pretend that I understand what he's saying, what it means. I could guess. What do you think? What's your take on it?
Well, 8-line poem would be, so if you're going to limit a poem to a certain number of, there's a certain esoteric element to that as well, where you would have some sort of, it would convey something in a very compact form with no fat on it. And
like a haiku.
Exactly.
That's
an expanded haiku. And the last line is, the last two lines, but the key to the city is in the sun that pins the branches to the sky. And I thought about that, and I realized that branches point upwards because they're pinned to the sky. They're reaching for they're literally reaching for the sun.
Right. It's beautiful, and it's a really beautiful poem. Just to read it as a poem, really. I'm not a huge poetry guy, but I could.
It's good.
Appreciate a good poem, and I'm assuming it's very metaphorical for other things, which
I don't know. That's the thing. The mobile spins to its collision. Mobiles were Calder. What created those? The artist Calder.
Barry's pointing. Where are you pointing?
The Calder that's on my wall over there.
Oh, okay.
That's a Calder with the sun and the moon.
Oh, right.
And he created mobiles. They're not like a thing that had been around. And he actually created those. And so people had them. They were much more common in the 60s and 70s. People would have mobiles in their home, hanging up that would spin around or whatever.
Right, okay.
And he's watching that. So...
that makes sense.
But the key to the city is the sun that pins the branches to the sky.
Yeah, that's
great song. And I don't know if it's a song I don't know that he ever performed it live. it seems like one of those things that's just sort of like sits there by itself in the middle of the record.
It seems like to separate the two songs, it's separating Oh You're Pretty Things, and then right after 8-line poem, you have Life on Mars.
That's right.
Which is number 4 song, Life on Mars, which is another great surrealistic lyrical song that tells a story. It's cool because it's like it's telling a story a little bit about this girl and her boring life and going to a film.
To me this is his She's Leaving Home, and it's got the same kind of character who's been living with her parents, maybe past the age which you would normally live with your parents.
Right.
And the girl with the mousy hair.
And it's sad, and it's so sad because she goes. You think at first like she's going to see a film, and so maybe that will be her escape. But no, because the film is a saddening bore.
And I do think that's metaphorical for. I do think he's talking about life in general.
Right.
Where people have these expectations of something's going to be different, and if I just and it turns out it's the same damn film.
Right, exactly. I've lived it 10 times or more, and she's just young, so she's wondering: is there a better life somewhere else? Maybe on Mars. Maybe there's life on Mars. Maybe that'd be something more meaningful out there.
She could spit in the eyes of fools, and as they ask her to focus on pay attention to the movie.
Right.
He's being snide. He's saying, they're gonna. You're contemplating all this sort of actuality of how things are, and the cycles that repeat themselves, and the sailors fighting in the dance hall.
Right. Which is the core. This song to me is amazing because it's got a great catchy sing-along cchorus, but it's not. It's like it's very specific. Sailors fighting in the dance hall. Look at those cavemen go.
Which apparently comes from somewhere else. Let me see where they're the Look at Those Cavemen Go is it's from the song Alley-Oop by the Hollywood Argyles.
Oh, okay, nice.
So he's and then
he's not stealing. David Bowie would never steal anything from anyone.
Well, one thing I will say that I've diving into this more and what I've noticed about David Bowie is he's not shy about things that have influenced him.
Honestly,
he's not. He's very, he's very.
Well, look who appears later on in this record. You got Bob Dylan and Andy Warhol appear later on down the road.
Lou Reed, and kind of Lou Reed too, in a way.
Absolutely.
So we will get to that.
Yeah.
But now, after Life on Mars, we have the song "Kooks,"
which is just unashamedly sentimental and sappy.
And this, I will tell you, this song has a special meaning to me because when he wrote it for his newborn son, Zoe, Duncan. I guess he calls himself Duncan now, but it was Zoe Bowie. And when I was listening to this in the late 80s, around 87, my wife was pregnant.
Yeah.
We were in Boston. We were living in Boston. I was playing in a band. We had no money, and we knew we had a baby on the way.
Yeah.
And
somebody's got to get a job.
Well, it's just, and it's scary. But then when you just think about them, and this obviously reminds me of a couple, just sort of welcoming, and I just love the imagery of they're telling him, if you stay with us, like he has a choice.
Right.
If you stay with us, you'll have, you're going
to be kooky too.
I love that part where he says, I'm going to give you a book of rules on what to say when people pick on you, because if you stay with us, you're going to definitely get picked on.
But and the irony of this is that he's the woman, the other person that's not discussed in this is Angie
Bowie. That's right.
Who he later on described as like living with a chainsaw, I think.
Yes. Well, she was a wild one.
Yeah, and so despite the soft glow of the lyrics, David was hard charging, hard partying.
Definitely. But this is like a really sweet song, and it's funny. I love when he
Rob doesn't want me to dig into the
No, it's beautiful. This song's so
it is a beautiful
to
song. It is. I agree, and it is heartfelt. He's writing it for his child.
And I know you because you guys had a kid young, and you know what it's like to be poor and have a little baby, but then you sort of have this little family, your own little kooky weird family, I think he captured that really good with this song.
He did.
And one other thing, did you know there's a little trumpet in there, and that's the bass player, Trevor Boulder.
Playing the trumpet?
Plays the trumpet in this song.
Yeah,
and
I actually noticed that when I listened to it, and it's silly, and it's silly,
and he mentions it in the song. That's one of the things they bought the little boy coming, a trumpet you can blow, and there's a little trumpet in the song, and it is silly, but it's really it's very
it's unashamedly sentimental.
It is. It definitely is.
And which I don't know if he does later on. I think things get. I think the unabashed sentimentality, like that,
right,
does not reappear. Maybe again. This was really unique in his catalog.
Yes, I agree. Definitely. Yeah, this is a unique song that sort of stands apart, and it's different than everything else on the record, pretty much.
It is.
And then we go from this song into probably the most depressingly dark song.
Yep, absolutely. Well, quicksand. What happens in quicksand? You drown.
Yes.
And Crowley, immediately, closer to the golden dawn, immersed in Crowley's uniform of imagery, living, and he brings up Himmler, which is...
Yes, right.
And we might as well mention that Bowie is known, he did have a fascination with the mystical side of Nazism, at least early on in his career, which is a painful thing to contemplate. Himmler was a fucking chicken farmer, and let's just not forget that any...
Right.
So, but it was the early 70s, things, and I don't think we had, there wasn't the same perception that we have now of that era, of the Nazis, and it was a little... less reviled. I don't know.
I guess. I mean, a little bit later on, a lot of punk bands adopted some things.
Of course they did, but that was,
But by then it was getting...
It was people,
reviled. It was starting to piss people off.
It was, And even here, I don't know if he's talking about something that's actual or if he's just making that a Himmler's Sacred Realm of Dream Reality. Frightened by the total goal, drawing to the ragged hole.
This song is really, it's dense, and there's a lot of it's really dense, and the lyrics, to me, it's kind of hard to make heads or tail of a lot of the lyrics.
Well, I can shed some light, I think, on those two lines. Frightened by the total goal, drawing to the ragged hole. In a lot of these ideologies or even mystical studies, the ideal conclusion is that you are absorbed into basically your individuality is totally subsumed by that of the universal being or the creator or the unibeing, and your actual individuality is extinguished. So but I ain't got the power anymore. Nietzsche again, the will to power, the Superman, but his battery's dead. He doesn't, he can't get there.
And the chorus, it's got probably one of the bleakest chorus. It's like, don't believe in yourself is the first line of the chorus, and it's like the opposite of the journey of don't stop believing. Don't stop believing.
But I'm gonna say that that's not exactly what he's getting at. Don't believe in yourself. Don't deceive with belief. Knowledge comes with death's release, which sounds bleak.
But it maybe sounds like don't worry about it now. Don't worry about anything because you'll get it when you die, when you finally pass. Then you'll get knowledge and everything.
Yeah, so, but don't believe in yourself. I think he's talking about don't literally referencing that other piece of mystical trivia about being absorbed by the creator. Don't believe in yourself. There's one way of phrasing that goes, it's not that God doesn't exist, it's that we don't. And so
right.
So don't believe in yourself as saying, don't believe that you actually are separate.
Yeah, and
separate.
don't get into the cult of yourself and everything, which is
Correct.
I think very
sure.
close to Bowie, how Bowie was, because we had talked about this last time about how someone like Lou Reed was just probably like a kind of a miserable guy in a lot of ways and everything.
Yeah.
Bowie didn't seem like that. He seemed like a very joyous guy, and he seemed like he had a really good sense of humor. I mean, I'm sure Lou Reed had a good sense of humor.
But David propped himself up with just a lot of drugs.
Well, yeah.
And one particular drug is he was known for, which makes you get kind of skinny. You do a lot.
Right.
And so
it was the time, though.
It was the time.
The 70s. Come on.
Yeah. He did.
Find me a rock star that wasn't doing drugs in the 70s.
There's a Bowie anecdote. It's not an anecdote. He was interviewed about the album. A few albums down the road, another great record of his, Station to Station. He says, I was doing so much coke, I don't remember writing it or recording it, and I don't know what any of the lyrics are about.
Isn't that crazy?
And it's one of his greatest records. So,
I remember you saying you really like that record.
That's how great is that?
That's how great
he has no idea.
He can do that. All right, so Quicksand, kind of a downer, bleak song, and then that's the end. If we're talking
sides
records, that's the end of the side one,
right?
And then so how does he start side two?
Oh yeah,
with a cover with "Fill Your Heart," which is a song about escaping the existential morass and just filling your heart with love. And it was written by a guy named Biff Rose, who I wasn't that familiar with, but he was a comedian and songwriter. And Biff Rose and Paul Williams, which I know you know who Paul Williams is.
Yeah. The tall guy.
Little Paul Williams, which, by the way, there's a documentary that came out a couple years ago on Paul Williams, like saying a guy was wondering if he was still alive.
Oh, yeah.
And then he found he did. And it's really good. It's called Paul Williams is Still Alive, I think. And,
So before we get into this song anymore, should we, since we're on side two, should we take a break for our sponsors?
Oh, yeah, okay, yes. Because we're going, after this we're going live, so we will obviously have sponsors.
We are back. Thank you to our sponsors.
Yes.
The big checks are rolling in.
We really just get more drinks when we take breaks.
Man, come on.
We refill our glasses. All right, "Fill Your Heart," song written by Biff Rose and Paul Williams. And I feel like he wanted to do a fun, lighthearted song after Quicksand, but he didn't want. This song is so trite. Like he probably didn't want to write one, so he said, "Well, I'll just cover this."
Yeah.
And did you ever hear the Tiny Tim? You know this song was also covered by Tiny Tim?
I did not. Like, where would he have heard this?
Well, it was the B-side. It was the B-side to "Tiptoe Through the Tulips."
Oh my God! Wow, did not know that. Okay. I mean, I like Tiny Tim, but I would not have thought of Bowie covering a song that Tiny Tim also.
He did. Bowie does some amusing covers. He did that whole Pinups record, and he's a fan.
Well, and unfortunately, Pinups not one of his more highly rated records.
No, I know that's a tough one.
Yeah, he did on Station to Station. He does a cover of "Wild as the Wind," which is Nina Simone song, and he actually does a pretty great. Yeah, he does a pretty great version with of that. But this is. Love cleans the mind and makes it free. Gentleness clears the soul. So I think maybe he wasn't capable at the time of writing anything this cheerful, and he needed something. Fear is only in your head. Fear's just in your head. So forget your head.
And he's singing a little a tongue in cheek too when he does. So free. He's doing a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, right. So maybe he's not convinced
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's still the guy in the quicksand. Really,
yeah, absolutely. You don't get from the quicksand to fill your heart in one easy move.
Just
and
flip a record over.
No.
And then we go into song 8, second song on the second side, which is Andy Warhol.
A fantastic song.
Such a good song. And
with the weird intro.
It's got I love it. I love studio. You hear these electronic sounds and then you hear them in the studio with their acoustics.
Andy.
Yeah, Warhol. And I guess the producer he didn't like how he's pronouncing his name,
Warhol.
so he's correcting him Warhol. And then there's some silence and he's like, "Are we rolling?" And it's like, yeah. And they all start cracking up, and then they go, "That is gold." I love that. That's studio gold.
And then, which is, and the funny thing about the switch from some of the other songs on this record is that Andy Warhol is probably the least spiritual, the least metaphysical.
Oh, right.
Absolutely pure materialism.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know if Warhol was introspective, but he certainly wasn't interested in the Aleister Crowley or Friedrich Nietzsche or the Golden Dawn.
No, you couldn't imagine him getting into conversations about any of that with anyone. No.
Take a cement fix. So that's Andy. A lot of times you see him with that frozen expression,
right.
Just sort of taking it all in. Be a standing cinema.
Yep.
But then Andy was always making other people do stuff or getting them to do things. He wasn't making them.
Right.
They were doing it for Andy's enjoyment.
But I feel like this is kind of, you could tell he's affectionate towards Andy Warhol.
Absolutely. I think that it's obvious that he felt like that Andy was a genuine mover and a shaker and changed things.
And it's a really cool song, and I love the guitar figure, the little guitar riffs and the strumming acoustics. There's a lot of really good acoustic guitar on this whole record. Like
there
strumming
is,
acoustics,
and there's a weird percussive
great.
something in this song. That's something hitting something that's not a drum.
Oh, right.
That's a slapping, somebody slapping something on a chair.
Right.
Or it's got that sound.
Kind of a Velvet Underground-ish, the way it's the percussive thing, but not an actual drum.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah. And Mo Tucker, that, very primitive, could be I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. Andy walking, Andy tired, Andy take a little snooze. Just the way that Warhol was kind of appeared to just do what he wanted to do. But in fact, behind it, there was, after he died, Lou Reed and John Cale managed to put aside their acrimony to make an album about
the songs for Drella. Yeah, that's right.
And the Drella is a combination of Dracula and Cinderella.
Right, nice. That's great.
And so, but there's a song on there called "Work," where Lou Reed talks about Andy having obsessive work ethic and working from the time he gets up in the morning. It's all work. Even if you see him out at a club, he's working. He's doing something. Right. So, and he'll think about paint and he'll think about glue. What a jolly boring thing to do. And that's another feature of some of Warhol's things is they're intentionally boring.
Right. Well, those movies, he's got a movie of the Empire State Building. It's just
and you're just speaking of koans. Remember, we had the koan. Some of Andy's stuff is like a koan. It's like, what are you supposed to do with it? What am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
And your uncertainty is the answer.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable silence.
Yeah, you can tell Bowie probably really appreciated that. He definitely appreciated that.
Yeah, and the silver screen Warhol's at the factory decorated with silver and the guy, love him or hate him, he had a huge influence on pop culture and Western society.
Right. And all right, so this was definitely a tribute to Andy Warhol, an homage.
Absolutely.
Now the next song for Bob Dylan, I don't know. I remember originally this was like my least favorite song on the record.
It is my least favorite song on the record.
Right, I sort of appreciate it a little more because at first I thought it was more just an homage, like a song for Bob Dylan, and I didn't realize that it's a kind of a parody also of Bob Dylan, and I didn't even realize till I read about it that Bob Dylan has a song called "Song for Woody."
Oh yeah,
that's about
Woody Guthrie.
Woody Guthrie, right? And it's kind of so he has some cool lines in this. I like when he says with a voice like sand and glue.
Yeah, right.
That's totally Dylan. But I don't know. It just seems strange that he's singing the song. But this is Bowie not being afraid to bring up his contemporaries.
Well, I think at the time, I'm not sure what time, Dylan had just put out a really awful album called Self Portrait that's universally listed as like the worst album in his catalog, even today.
Oh, really?
Like even lower than the Christmas album.
Oh, okay.
And so Self Portrait is just supposed to be just totally terrible.
Are there any songs on that I would know?
I should have listened to it, but I haven't. I stick with the stuff that's like, this is gold. And the ones where he's not on his game,
right, because I feel like in a way this is sort of like a parody of that in a way, because I know Dylan, as great as Dylan is and as great a lyricist, he does have songs. I'll never forget. I know there's a song. I don't know what album it's on. It's about Lenny Bruce. I guess it's called Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
But he's got a line in there. But he sure was funny, and he sure told the truth. And it's like this reminds me of that. We're just like singing about someone else and just sort of telling how he is, and it's like okay.
Couple of songs from your old scrapbook said "Could Send Her Home Again." Just now the. Here she comes again. The same old painted lady from the brow
right, now,
of a
what is that?
brain.
Because the chorus of the song sort of goes in a different direction, and the chorus is cool, but I have no idea.
One of the comments that I looked at said the brow of a superbrain is Dylan. So, but his brow, you can see him sort of that kind of furrowed brow of Dylan, that's intense look that he has.
Right.
In the brow of the super, and she'll scratch this world to pieces as she comes on like a friend. I guess maybe he's talking about some of the women in Dylan's songs.
Right, yeah.
Which I always assumed were...
At first I was wondering if he was like calling Dylan, here she comes, like it's Dylan, but no. I think you're right. He's talking about a woman. And
Joan Baez, I mean, she appears, she's the muse in some of the material that would have been at that time that he would have been responding to. But.
Right. I've never seen anything written. I've never heard anything, but I can imagine that Dylan, in hearing this, didn't like this.
I wouldn't think so.
I would think he wouldn't like it.
But here's the thing. I think that people who've been around Dylan, you would have no idea whether he was going to like it or not.
Right,
or whether he would tell you the truth about whether he liked it or not. Or whether...
Right.
He's a very enigmatic character, far more enigmatic than David Bowie.
Yes, right, that's true. But I give David Bowie props for just because it is kind of brave in a way to just do a song like that, and throw a song like that on this record.
Sure.
But it is, I will still say, it's probably my least favorite song of a record where I love just about every song.
Yeah. You gave your heart to every bedsit room. He had already been. Dylan was this mythological figure. He still is, but at the time, it was unquestionable that he was an icon of the 20th century in the same category as any famous artist that you name. And
I like how he brings up the duality, like Robert Zimmerman. He mentions his real name, Robert Zimmerman. Have you met? Have you met this Dylan bloke?
Yeah, you know how he became Bob Dylan?
I do not know, no.
Okay, it's in that documentary, No Direction Home. He says his parents, he opened this closet up, and they had a Victrola in there. And there was a record on it, and so he pulled the Victrola up and cranked it up, and put the needle on, and the song was this gospel song called Drifting Too Far From Shore. And he said, when the needle dropped to when the record ended, that that 78 record,
Yeah.
he was a changed person.
Oh, okay, that changed.
That like the voices and the sound of it just entered him in a way, and that was it. You know, it was like it was a watershed.
This nerdy Jewish kid anymore.
No, he wasn't. You know, he was like,
yeah.
oh, okay,
Right.
I'm out of here. Right. So he was Bob Dylan.
Well,
all right.
And now we go into Queen Bitch, which is, I guess this is like the trio of songs where he's sort of paying tribute to other people. Because and you have Andy Warhol, then you have a song for Bob Dylan. And Queen Bitch is pretty much understood that it's a tribute to the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed.
Right.
And it does, and definitely Queen Bitch also sounds like a song that could definitely be on the next record.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely Queen Bitch could be. In fact, whenever I play Hunky Dory and it comes on, a lot of times I'll think, wasn't that one?
I forgot.
Okay.
I did the exact same thing
It's
too,
supposed
because
to
I
be on Ziggy
confused
Stardust.
that. There's a song on Ziggy Stardust that I confused with this.
This is a template for the Spiders from Mars.
Yes, and it's got that fuzzed out guitar,
Yep.
that great guitar that you hear a lot
Yeah.
on Spiders from Mars.
Yep.
And
Props to the great Mick Ronson, who the older I get, the more I appreciate as being in the same league as Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page.
oh, I know, right?
Eric
So
Clapton.
good. He's just so good, and he brings. And also, we didn't mention, but a lot of these songs with the strings, those are all
Those
him.
are arranging the
He
strings.
did all the string arrangements. Yeah,
exactly.
Rick Wakeman. So you have Rick Wakeman playing piano. Bowie played some piano on this too, but Rick Wakeman played on. And then you got Mick Ronson doing all those
who was
awesome strings.
The unsung electric guitar genius.
Yeah.
He's not unsung, but he doesn't get the same level of respect as those other guys, and he really is equally unique.
Super
Where
talented.
as soon as he
like,
plays
it's
one
unbelievable.
note, you're like, oh, it's Mick Ronson right there. So
I have a personal thing in Queen Bitch that I don't know if you may have noticed this. I always there's a Killers song called Mr. Brightside. That's a good song. It was on their first Killers album. It's called Mr. Brightside. But whenever I hear that song, I think of Queen Bitch, and I think they sort of do it on purpose, because there's especially a lot of the way the lyrics go. But there's one line in Queen Bitch where he goes, and I'm phoning a cab. Something about I'm phoning a cab, and they say that in this Mr. Brightside. He says, and she's calling a cab, but they say it the same way too. And they say a bunch of other lyrics that sound very, and she's leading him on, and she'll lay him right down. So
They're
it's
doing
very.
Queen Bitch,
So I think that's definitely an homage to this song, Queen Bitch.
or an homage, or maybe they stole it and didn't realize it. Which are things that we've all done.
Right. But I have a feeling that guy, whatever, Brendan Flowers, I'm sure he was a big Bowie fan.
Bowie fan, sure.
Yeah. I don't think he would tonight.
And then it's all very seedy, New York.
Yes, right. Which is the whole Velvet Underground, Lou Reed. It almost the guitar. What is it? What Velvet Underground song is it sort of reminiscent of?
I'll have to go back and listen.
Is it
and
White Light, White Heat? Maybe.
Yeah,
It's probably not a specific. It's not a specific.
It's just
Velvet
got the
Underground
feel.
song.
It's got some of the feel.
Definitely a Velvet Underground vibe, and I guess I guess Bowie was a big fan, and I guess when he was younger, he had heard the Velvet Underground, the Andy Warhol. Velvet
of course,
Echo, and it was a big influence on him.
Yeah,
really,
of course.
Appreciate that. So again, he's not afraid to show his influences and pay tribute to them, which is cool.
There's that photo from I don't know. It's got to be maybe a couple of years after this of Bowie and Iggy and Lou and Bowie are flanking Iggy and holding him up, and Iggy looks like he's totally
I love it.
plastered. And you would never look at that picture and go, "Oh, he's going to be the guy that's still alive."
Right?
Yeah. No, he's gonna. You would think,
right.
"Oh, he's going to be first to go." Nope.
Damn it, you're right. Oh,
Yeah.
my God,
So. My heart's in the basement. My weekend's in at all time low because she's hoping to score. So I can't see her letting him go. Walk out of her heart. Walk out of her mind. Oh, she's so swishy in her satin and tat, in her frock coat, and her bippity boppity hat. Oh, I could do better than that. Definitely a Velvet's.
And her name also is Sister Flo, which
Sister Flo.
totally sounds like is a character.
Yeah, for sure.
It could be a character in a
Yes,
lyric song,
indeedy.
Sister Flo.
So yeah, he's his Velvet's homage, and we go to the final song.
The Bowie Brothers.
My favorite song on the album. In fact, one of my favorite Bowie songs.
Really?
Yeah.
It is. It's a great song, and it's funny. Now, I'd always loved this song. It's the last song on the record, and it is a great song, but I never dove into lyrics at all.
Yeah.
And I always assumed it's about these brothers, maybe, or Bowie. It's about something, and then reading it, you realize it's not. I don't even know what it's about.
Yeah.
But it's the lyrics are just the whole song gets has a very haunting quality to it, and it's very abstract.
To me, it reads like a Dickens sort of scene in a late 19th century, and some of the words seem to harken back to an older era.
Right.
And the Goodman tomorrow had their feet in the wallow, and their heads of brawn were nicely shorn. And how they bought their positions with saccharine and trust. This song stands apart in his catalog.
Saccharine, that is a line in there, because there's a band called
Saccharine Trust, a great LA
That's right.
sort of hardcore mixed with poetry. And
Look at them.
and so this tells the story of two characters, that are it's like ruffians. They comes across as like, or maybe if you know of, I'm going to be really esoteric, not esoteric, but the Three Penny Opera, the Kurt Weill, from the song Mac the Knife. The main character of the Three Penny Opera is this street thief, and also he's a bad guy. He's a killer, and it's got that feel of maybe Kurt Weill, the German Kurt Weill. We're talking about 1930s,
Not the
who's good as well, but
nothing
wrong with Kurt Weill, but. The Bowie Brothers in our wings that bark, flashing teeth of brass, standing tall in the dark. I mean, it's you get a picture of these characters in dark alleyways and maybe in places, that are not lit by electric lights. Right.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely has now my brother lays upon the rocks. He could be dead. He could be not. He could be you.
Yeah, right. And Hank, and we were so turned on by your lack of conclusions, which is great. He's talking about people that are just characters who are interesting characters, and they're not introspective. They're just these interesting characters who are who they are. Right.
And he did, and it's the last song on the record, and it's also one of the last songs he wrote for the record. Right. He sort of wrote it and put it together and finished it up by the end of the record. And but there is a great quote that I read by him that he supposedly told producer Ken Scott that it was a track for the American market specifically because, and this is the quote from Bowie, the Americans always like to read things into things. Even though the lyrics make absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
But that could have just been Bowie having a little, because he did have a really good, taking the piss. I think so. Because he did have a really good sense of humor. I'm sure that's not true.
You couldn't fake, if you could fake this kind of apparent concern for two fictional characters that you've come up with. Hats off to you, because it does.
But that's great, because we are, at the end of the day, we are two Americans that like to read things into things.
Absolutely. Hook, line, and sinker. This is one of my favorite Bowie songs. I could listen to it right now and be just as beguiled as I was the first time I heard it.
Yes, yes, and it's got that great the end part, the whole end part when he goes into the lady. It sounds like a beer hall.
It does. It does. It's got a feel. It's like it's old.
Right. Yeah. Which I wonder too. Is he singing like an old English folk thing? But no, it is all his. It's his song, but it sounds like something that maybe they sang.
I'm starving for my gravy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please. Please, what's the exact, I gotta get to then I'm gonna screw it up. Where he's, come on, Barry. Kings of Oblivion, okay. There's, Kings of Oblivion, the year after this came out, the band called the Pink Fairies made an album called Kings of Oblivion, which is an unsung rock and roll classic.
Okay, I've heard the Pink Fairies. I know I have some Pink Fairies on my
very influential on punk rock. But
yes.
Lay me place and bake me pie, I'm starving for me gravy. Leave my shoes and door unlocked, I might just slip away. And just for the day. So he adds to that mystery with, you got this character that's just gonna head out in the early dawn hours and just kind of disappear. Please come away.
Right. Hey.
Yeah, it's a great song. It's a great way to close the record because it ends with this like cinematic.
Yes.
It's a cinematic tune, and it's whether he faked it or not, it's a beautiful thing.
I don't think he did.
I don't think he did either. I think there's something there, and it also reminds me. There's another song in his catalog that it links up with in some way, and it's off Scary Monsters. Oh, David, what shall I do? They wait for me in the hall. What's the song I'm thinking of?
I was listening to Scary Monsters.
It's the longest song ever recorded, and it's purported to be about Gary Newman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm too lazy to look at it.
It's not Scream Like a Baby. It's not... we'll just edit this out. We'll get to it. So what is
it?
We
won't. He always says that, but he won't.
Yeah. It's not because you're young. It's not It's No Game. It's not Up the Hill Backwards. It's not... Come on, Barry.
If only you had some device you could look it up at.
Yeah,
he's sitting right. He's literally sitting in front of his laptop.
I'm going to use the excuse that I took an antihistamine this morning.
Oh, and he's been pounding these.
Well, the vodka doesn't help either. But
no.
my memory goes to shit when I take antihistamines, and that's not. I'm not kidding. And it's kind of scary.
No, I believe you.
But I would rather have that than feel like my skin is going to crawl away from my body during the day.
Yeah, it doesn't sound
Teenage Wildlife.
Oh, okay.
6 minutes and 56 seconds. So Teenage Wildlife is another song where there's characters in there, and they're interesting characters, and one of them's actually talking directly to Bowie, and it's been claimed that it's Gary Newman, who had a hit with Cars. David, what shall I do? They wait for me in the hall, and David says, I don't know anything. Something like I don't know anything about Always. He's sort of dismissive of this character,
right.
But it's got the same mystery where you want to know more about that story, like the Bewley Brothers. You want to know who they were.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so he leaves enough gaps in there.
And sadly, we'll never know because David is no longer with us, and that's to me.
If we researched it, we may. I mean, he might have come out and said, "I'll tell you what that song's
about." Who knows if it's true? He says a lot of stuff. Who knows if it's
true? And people's perceptions change over time about what they actually were talking about when they wrote things.
Exactly.
The original inspiration.
Station to Station. He doesn't remember what the hell he was talking about.
He says he doesn't remember what he was talking about.
Right.
So, and there's actually a version of Quicksand, which is. Again, I hate to say this, one of my favorite Bowie tracks, and there's an acoustic demo that's on the.
You sent that to me, but is that officially on something?
It's on the Ryko, the Ryko disc CDs, which came out in the 90s, early 90s. Maybe they were the second time his CDs had come out. His stuff had come out on CD, and the Ryko disc ones had bonus tracks. Every album had bonus tracks, and some of the bonus tracks you're like, eh, and some of them were like sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel. It was like John, I'm Only Dancing 74 or 76 was really awful. But then there's this on Hunky Dory, there was this acoustic demo of the song Quicksand, which you can find on your favorite video streaming site.
And yeah, it is. It's really stripped down, and
it's really intense.
Really good,
he's playing 12 string, and he's singing, and his voice it's very moving.
Yes. It has even more gravitas or something.
It does. In fact, when you after you get used to listening to that one, when you hear Quicksand on the record, you're kind of like, he kind of dumbed down Quicksand on the record and made it not quite as intense as that demo is.
Yeah, that's great.
So, all
right, so we did it. That's Hunky Dory, people.
And next week we talked out in the hall about what was going to be next week's album. Is
I forgot already.
Wow, a classic, one of the great unsung rock and roll classic albums.
Days of Wine and Roses.
The Days of Wine and Roses by the Dream Syndicate, which kind of appeared out of nowhere in 1983, and it's as if some.
It's that old. God, it's so goddamn old.
Yeah, man. We are. And it appeared, and the first time I heard it, it was like some kids in LA had gotten a hold of White Light, White Heat, and like, okay, let's redo White Light, White Heat, or let's do, because it's got an unhinged glory to it that they actually tamped down after that album.
Yeah.
A out of control feedback guitar and songs about desperate characters living desperate lives. All right, so we'll see you next time, and look for our podcast on SoundCloud, and we'll be publishing it on iTunes and all your favorite podcast sites.
Yes, don't forget you can reach us at trgmh33@gmail. That's Barry Stock.
That's Rob Elba.
We're out.
Good night.
We got to introduce ourselves at the beginning.
Damn, we're right at an hour.
Did we do it again?